Just like we're going to finish eating our chocolate and hitting our vapes before we actually start.
This is actually an ASMR video. We're not here to actually like talk about anything except you're going to hear me eat this chocolate. People would freak out.
They'd be like, what? Okay. They're like, I'm down.
Should we just record and say fuck it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, the chocolate's almost done. Sorry, this is taking me way longer than I thought. All right. What up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Danna-Gift Show. I'm your host, and I have with me Nathan Kholerman. And let me give you your intro on him because I wanted to make sure I do this properly. So Nathan Kholerman is a devoted father, a spiritual psychopath, which I cannot wait for you to explain what that is. Transformational facilitator, speaker, writer, podcaster, U.S. Army veteran, and founder of New Intention. And when did you start New Intention?
Back in 2017.
Oh, I thought that was new. Mm-mm. So New Intention is not new. So Nathan is a multidisciplinary expert in transpersonal psychology, somatic therapy, metaphysics, energy medicine, mysticism, leadership, and shamanic healing. I feel like if I tried to say all of that in one breath, I would definitely just pass out because he's done so much in his life. He's helped professional athletes, corporate executives, entrepreneurs, veterans, and elite coaches to unlock their inner wisdom, overcome challenges, and achieve mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being. So that is a crazy bio intro that you sent me. And normally I'm like, oh, just kind of cut it to make it shorter. But I'm like, we have to include everything you've done because you've done so much. Like, how many years of studying did this whole process take?
At least over a decade.
A decade worth of knowledge?
Yeah.
You hear that? I have a man who's studied for a decade in this sitting here, which is pretty cool, actually. So thank you for being on my show and sharing your knowledge, because I'm really, really excited to dive into today's topic. We're going to be basically debunking the coaching industry from a man who is in coaching and very well versed in it, very well known in it. Yeah, thank you for being on this show.
Absolutely. I'm so pumped for this.
Yeah.
I love you so much, and I just love like the space, the setup, the experience, like how much love and attention and intention you put into this.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hands down, so happy to be here.
It's a baby. It's a baby podcast, but it's going to fucking grow. I feel it.
It's already happening.
It's already happening. It's in the ether.
It's already here. It's already happened.
I like doing that. Yeah. Somebody started doing, I did like a spiritual shamanic journey, and somebody, well, I guess the teacher, the coach, facilitator, did that whole like in my ears. Yeah. And at first I was like, I didn't know how my body liked it. Like the noises were kind of irritating to me. But then eventually, after I stopped trying to, I guess, control everything in my life, the noises and everything kind of settled me in a different way. But anyways, that's a whole different story. So I want to dive into some of the questions because obviously we only have an hour, at least for this episode, for this segment, because we're also going to do the altered state. But can you explain to me what a spiritual psychopath is?
Yes.
And why do you define yourself as a spiritual psychopath?
It's the duality, right? Because before we unify, before we complete, before we move through the process of what Carl Jung defines as individuation, which is essentially carving out our own individual path, we have to know the dark. We have to know the light. We can, yes, be inherently all spiritual beings, which we'll cover, and being a psychopath and actually accepting that part of ourselves, which is most likely the darkest and most sinister and most repressed part of ourselves, is actually what I believe to be the true path, right? The one, not the one path, right? But the one greatest obstacle that anyone can overcome on their journey of self-love and acceptance.
So overcoming that darkness, accepting it, learning to love it. When you're dealing with that darkness, is it a place where you're trying to get rid of it? Or is it more of like I don't know, just having a love for the darkness and learning how to have that coexist with your life.
Yeah, it's the shadow. Right? And it's like the shadow, it's always with us. Right? When the sun hits our bodies and behind us is a shadow, it's the thing that we normally don't even look at. It's the thing that we know is there, yet when we look at it, it's kind of dark and gloomy, and we have our own assumptions about it, when in reality, that was formed through our lived experience. It's a piece of us. It's a part of us. So it's not so much getting rid of it. It's learning to acknowledge it, to accept it. And 9 times out of 10, it's the part of ourselves that we need to love most.
Oh, that's so true. There's definitely been, so I mean, I kind of mentioned it to you in a DM that I've been like going through it, mostly financial, but also other deeper things. And one of it has been learning to, well, one, discovering my darkness, and then 2, learning how to have it coexist in my world today without putting shame and guilt to my past and all of that. But it's not an easy process to discover your darkness. I feel like, I don't know, like, is there a way, which I guess you can explain that, is there a way in which you open that up where it feels safe to bring that up, you personally?
Yeah. I mean, this is where honesty comes into play. You know, when we can be fully honest with ourselves and feel safe enough with others around us, right? There's a saying that I heard from my buddy Garen that goes, those who know who knows. And that's a special type of relationship. It's like a certain language that we're speaking. It's almost trying to explain ayahuasca to someone who hasn't sat with ayahuasca. There's a dissonance there because there's a lack of understanding or relativity, which safety is relative as well.
Yeah.
Right? So are we fully safe within ourselves, and do we feel safe with someone who we're in relationship with to actually open and disclose that sensitive information? Right? We have the same reservations about like people calling us and trying to get our personal information over the phone, and there's always that layer of skepticism. But we walk with that every single day and every single interaction because we don't have that connectivity that we once did.
Yeah, that's very true. But do you feel like when you're doing your deep diving into your darkness, is it something that you do or discover typically alone? Or would you say that it's easier to have somebody to hold space for you or help you kind of work through that?
I think both serve a time and place, right? There's a time to have something very deeply interpersonal and sacred and reverent and secret, right? Because we all have to have our secrets. Because if we were just all spewing our life experience all over the place, then what's left for us?
That's true.
Right? That's like, spilling your seed everywhere.
Yeah.
Guys.
Don't be doing that, guys.
Guys, men, right? And it's that, and then there's a time and place to do that inner work internally and like have the understanding and the comprehension and the ability to articulate it in a group setting where you actually know what you need and how to ask for support.
I think that's part of the issue that a lot of people come across is they don't know what they need. And I think that, I guess that goes back into you need to spend time to really discover what makes you happy and what is it that triggers you and just really discovering you.
Yeah, I mean, in needs, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like sometimes all we need are to take care of our basic physiological needs and functions. Are we drinking enough water? Are we getting outside? Are we touching the earth? Are we sleeping enough? Are we eating good foods? And are we like actively connecting with people who light us up every single day? Take everything else away, and everything else is a preference.
That's so true.
Like, it's all just preference.
Yep. I freaking hate, like, for some reason, when I was younger, I used to think that I didn't have to, eat certain things. I didn't have to get sleep. Like, I would fucking party forever and then go to work and just, like, never get any sleep, and I was fine. But now, because I'm more aware and awakened, all of these things, when I don't get sleep, if I don't eat properly, if all that it, like, affects me on a much stronger level. Now, I don't know if that's, like, better or worse, like, because I felt indestructible before. Now I'm definitely more destructible. But I don't know. Awakening's such an interesting process.
I mean, I've been talking about this a lot because we were just talking about
Yeah.
like I was in this like dark, mysterious period and like, who am I and what am I here to do?
Yeah.
And then I kind of went back to these like thought processes, like, what was it like before I started doing the work? And I was like mixed up in all this like toxic shit
Yeah.
and like in like the darkest cultures imaginable. And I was quote unquote happier, right? And then it came to the realization, it's like, oh yeah, that's what it means. Ignorance is bliss, right? Because awareness is painful. Like awareness without action is suffering. So not having
so
like
true.
a course or a pre-designed pathway that's already done for us. I've been learning through fatherhood and parenthood. It's painful. Like I want to help this little child or I want to help this person who I know who I can help. And I have to actually let them hit their own rock bottom.
Oh,
And that to me is my suffering that I chose, which I can acknowledge. And there's a gift for me here somewhere.
yeah.
Fucking hard.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
hard.
It's
'Cause-
hard to watch someone you love go like suffer, but you know that they also have to do it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
like, how often do we walk around and maybe like grocery store? Or, I mean, for those of us in Arizona, you go down to Old Town, right? And it's like the lack of awareness, right, is sometimes painful. The observation of it, right? And I have to like catch myself in my own narcissistic ways where it's like, oh, I believe everybody should wake up. And then recognizing like it has nothing to do with me. Like that's just where they're at. So how do I have more compassion for that? How can I meet them where they're at? And just my presence or just my existence alone might inspire them to start asking questions.
But it's not. Oh, and actually, that will prompt me to this question. When is it your. So if you're observing somebody, you can tell that they're, suffering because you're aware, as aware as you are today. When is it your place to really tell somebody that they could use some additional help? Or is it your place?
Yeah, I've had to wrestle with that one a lot.
You're like, how do I answer this?
Oh, I know exactly how to answer it. It's just it's do your fucking work. That would have been like Sergeant Kholerman like 10 years ago. But now it's I'm more curious. And I'm more curious and I'm more interested in finding out who they think they are.
Oh,
And upon some of those questions, some people come to the realization like they don't know how to answer it or it makes them really uncomfortable. And that's kind of where I'm like, okay, like that's cool, and then I'll like step away because it's not my place to intervene on anybody's path.
Oh,
Like
so
I said,
you kind of
rescuing
just
from rock bottom. That used to be me. And now it's like, hey, like if you ever want to have a conversation or if you ever just, want to go get coffee or something like that and talk, let me know. But somebody has to make that decision for themselves. It's the same thing. That's why like these morning frameworks, I like to use these as reference points. Everybody reads like the Miracle Morning or the 5 a.m. Club or things like that. And then they wonder why that only a small amount of percentage of people can actually adopt those things. Because they're taking in information from something outside of themselves and then determining that this is their right path. And then somewhere along the way, they fall off of the path because they weren't the ones to come up with it.
Oh, it makes me think of the movie Inception. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah.
Where it's like, you can instill an idea in someone's brain, but you have to have them basically come up with it themselves, which Inception, they go like deep, deep into the layers of the subconscious and they make it appear that that person had their own thought.
Right.
That own thought that they pushed onto them, obviously. But so that's what you're basically saying is people have to come to their own conclusion.
Yeah, and we were just talking about AI, right? It's like AI works off of dictations, right? But if you actually change your inputs and prompts to suggestions, the outcomes are dramatically different.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a lot of people out here dictating how things should go or dictating what people should do and telling people what to do versus offering suggestions and invitations for them to actually explore that for themselves. And it's a creative process.
Yeah. So you have to really kind of cater your questions to make sure you're extracting the right information so that they can perceive that in their own way, right? So what if, have you dealt with a client who has been a little bit more difficult, I guess, to come to their own conclusions? Like, do you just have to continue working with them and asking them a bunch of questions?
I mean, there's such a thing called embodied resistance. Like embodied. It's when your emotions, your body, and your mentality are all running the same pathway, when they're all speaking the same language.
Okay.
And we can be embodied in a lot of healthy ways, and we can be also equally embodied in a lot of unhealthy ways. We can be just as embodied as we are healed, as we are addicted.
Oh, wow.
So recognizing that and just placing that as a reference point, some people are so embodied in who they think they are and what they're resistant to or what they believe in, that sometimes it's so calcified. It's like a hardened shell. It's like they're wearing armor all the time.
They put themselves in a bubble.
Exactly. So how many times am I going to swing this mace of consciousness into their armor of resistance until I eventually determine that nothing my weapon will do will actually penetrate them?
At that point, have you had to let people move on to a different coach,
Yeah.
or if you haven't been able to help them in that way?
Yeah, I've had to let go.
Yeah.
And I can only do so much. And you have to meet me, or else this isn't going to work. This is a relational ship,
Yeah.
right? And we're both sailing towards the same direction, but if your ship is going one way and mine is going the other, there's no way that our paths will ever collide in a meaningful way.
Yeah. Very
Right?
true.
So choose your path, pick your path. And no matter what, like, you're either taking the bullet train or the scenic route. Either way, you're going to wind up at the same destination.
Yeah.
That's up to you.
Yeah.
So will I do as much as I can and everything in my power? Absolutely. And it's gotten to the point where I don't have to really let people go. It's suggestions and invitations in which they can choose however they want, in which then my role is, okay, if they choose this direction, what level of support do they need? And at what pace will they be able to move to where this isn't going to damage them even further? Right? Because at that point, it's a social responsibility.
Right. And have you, speaking of like getting people damaged, I want to talk about, have you had people who came to you after they've already dealt with a coach and they're just more fucked up than they would have been? Sorry, fucked up is a really aggressive way to explain someone's mental state, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, have they came to you more distraught than they would have been had they not dealt with that coach?
Mostly from therapy.
Oh, can you define the difference between therapy and coaching?
Yeah. So therapy, and again, this is just my opinion.
Yeah.
Therapy to me is an intervention when someone needs extreme levels of care versus coaching where somebody might need some additional care. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
And there's a difference because some people hire therapists when in reality they should probably be hiring a coach. And some people are hiring coaches when in fact they should be hiring therapists. And it's a misunderstanding of where they're needing to go and what the best vehicle to drive them to their destination should be. And there's not enough assessment, in my opinion, to determine that, in which when people are working with severe levels of trauma, and they're seeking a quote-unquote trauma-informed coach, that's not the same. That coach is not equipped in certain modalities or techniques or have the lived and or learned experience to navigate that. And because of that, in which I have seen people come from coaching in the same way, because they're working with not so much a non-educated coach, I call it an inexperienced coach, right? So when they're working with someone who might be inexperienced in the ways that they might need the most support in, then what happens is there's this bypassing that happens. And bypassing is really common in coaching, consulting, everywhere, right? Because 9 times out of 10, right, how do therapists become therapists? Chances are they needed therapy. So they decided to learn therapy and then do it for other people, and that brought the sense of purpose back to themselves, when in reality that's the escape pathway without the awareness.
That could be dangerous, can't that be, for your clients?
Right.
Because it's like the broken leading the broken.
Right. And there's even like, I forgot what I saw on like Netflix or something, and there's this like therapist who would like exploit her clients, or she would like take advantage or intervene with her own personal biases when it's supposed to be an unbiased source, because that's a big piece of the work. And this is what they talk about in shamanic work all the time. It's like you can only lead others through the darkness that you faced. Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, right, in general, will choose the path of least resistance, which is avoidance or negligence. So when we start seeing people who are maybe coming to me, or anyone else for that matter, who come in more quote unquote damaged or quote unquote wounded, then what happens is there's a lack of trust. There's a breach of trust, in which now that is an additional layer of protection that has to be navigated, because now there's a buffer time increase versus the open and receptive state. Now there's this very closed off and defensive state, because I just came from someone who hurt me, and now I can't trust them. And if I can't trust the person who I thought would help me, then what are my friends capable of? Or what is my family capable of? Or what things were planted inside of that person's mind through the duration, if they were coming from a place of inexperience and lack of awareness? And they're just things to consider.
Yeah.
You know, there's no blanket statement solution to it. It's just kind of depending on the level of integrity, which is a huge thing.
Yeah.
Right? We live in a society that lacks integrity.
Oh my
We're run by a government who lacks integrity.
Yep.
And I can go further down the line, right? But really, when we start looking at the corruption, which is the seed of all evil, that corruption is more so for selfish needs, greed or pleasure, or not to say pleasure is an evil, right? But the intent of pleasure can be evil. So it's recognizing that it's possible and it's imminent.
Yeah.
And that requires a high level of responsibility and integrity with whoever's leading anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a way that you can determine if somebody is equipped to coach you in that way? So I know a lot of people, they'll go into these coaching calls and they're not really sure what quality traits or things to look for. Is there distinctive quality traits, or is it more of a internal thing where you just have to kind of go with your gut feeling and decide?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
That one.
Right. So many people, especially in this day and age with like technology and advancements and pills to provide the solutions, which are already within you. It's the gut instinct is the most powerful, right? Because a level of integrity and a level of embodiment is a felt sense, right?
Yeah.
And you know it, right? Let's say you're at a party and you walk up to somebody and you're like, I don't get good vibes from this person.
Yeah.
Right? How often do we shut that feeling off to buy into the accolades or all the logical reasons why someone is well equipped, aka the letters by your last name, become the markers of, well, I have a bad feeling, yet the letters substantiate and qualify this person, when in reality, that is the first thing I look for when not qualifying someone. Now with where I'm at.
Yeah.
Because even though there's letters, I don't need that to say that this person is well equipped or not. Like, level of education to me at this point doesn't mean much, right?
Yeah.
It's lived experience, and it's, do I feel a certain energy from you, right?
Yeah.
Is there a certain resonance? Do I feel safe around you, or am I skeptical that you might turn and punch me in the face? Or like,
and I think you do know, like, you can feel when somebody's energy is off. But then again, also there is that feeling of like, is this just my trauma causing me to feel like that person's energy is off? So an example is, like, I have a lot of wounds around sisterhood and just women in general. So I got bullied a lot. And so every time I'm around a woman, not every time, it's getting better, but a lot of the times I'll sit with a woman who seems great, well-intentioned, everything. And when I actually check in with my thoughts, it's telling me like something's off, like her energy or blah, blah, blah. But so many times I've been proven wrong after getting to know the person a little bit more, that there was nothing off. It's probably just my trauma. So how do you determine the difference between, okay, it's my trauma putting up a wall and it's telling my gut that this isn't right, versus, okay, this is actually like a true feeling of why I'm feeling this way?
Yeah. And it's interesting that you bring up the trauma thing, right? Because every trauma holds a story, you know, like the story of there's trauma that I associate to bullying, right? When we can recognize too, and even science suggests now, that trauma is not what happened to you. It's what happened inside of your body as a result of not being able to process what had happened to you.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
that's in somatic therapies. That's why it's proven to be highly effective, because when we start moving into the narrative or the story that surrounds it, which is not meant to devalidate or invalidate your experience, because yeah, there's stuff and associations to that,
Yeah.
which is important to recognize at a certain point. And then it's learning to like trust yourself again in that way, right? To trust that I already have the answers. I trust that I have the ability to check in with myself and ask, am I closing myself off? Am I letting the narrative stand in the way? Or am I willing and open to actually experience it, in which I might have a possibility to redefine that? And it's a layering process, right? Because even from those instances when we were younger, right? How many times did we close ourselves off or block ourselves off from an opportunity to heal it?
Yeah.
You know, because every time we turn away from it, we add another layer, and we add another layer, and we add another layer. And then we wonder why our parents and grandparents, 50, 60, 70 years old, walk around with this calcified idea of self, and this calcified idea of society, and this calcified idea that I'm never going to change, right? People don't change. That's the limiting thought, limiting belief that goes with that, you know, and unresolved trauma, it is always in a movement process, right? It's always in a moving process, because at one point it got stuck. So what it does is it says, this area of life is incomplete. So what you need on a biological level is to keep seeking out those experiences to complete it, right? What we don't complete, we repeat.
Very true. So you're saying like we could be manifesting experiences that would trigger us so that we can move past that and heal.
Yes.
Because the ultimate goal as humans is really to reach enlightenment, right? Healing. That's so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, triggers are the, what I call like divine messengers, right? If you feel triggered about something, chances are there's something unresolved, right?
Yeah.
A trigger is just something that happens inside of our body that reminds us of something in the past that we associate to being painful. Right? So we can like recognize like, oh my God, I'm feeling this thing. I call them activations, right? I feel this thing activating inside of my body when I'm around this person. And I know there's a story around sisterhood or brotherhood, or, you know, this is the same feeling I get around mom or dad. You know, can I open myself up to getting hurt again? Because now I trust that with who I am now and where I'm at now, and the tools and resources that I have at my disposal, if we believe to have them at least, am I willing and open to know that even if I get hurt, I know how to process this now, and I can actually step into a more unified, completed state of myself, knowing that I can heal from this too. And most people are not willing to feel the pain again,
Yeah.
because who does?
I mean,
right?
who, yeah. Naturally,
Who
you're like,
does?
yeah, pain, I'm going right there. Like,
Right.
nobody necessarily wants to feel the pain.
No.
But if the desire for growth is there and stronger, then you're willing to step into it.
Right. Like, how many people are willing to go to the gym every single day and put their body through pain at the expense of growth or fat loss or some tangible result that contributes to their confidence?
Yeah.
Why do we do that thing differently then
Yeah.
over here? Because it has a psychological attachment to it,
Yeah.
right? In which it's all the same,
Yeah.
right? When you look at things from a bird's eye view, at least.
It really is. And that's why, like, honestly, if people are just feeling like they're hurting all the time and can't figure out why they're just in such a brain fog or just in pain all the time, I feel like, honestly, just starting off with the fucking gym and like getting your body right, like that will catapult you into your journey of awakening. I personally believe, because it's the easiest. It sounds so silly and like to say this out loud because I've never actually said this, but it's the easiest entryway into your healing. because you can see the physical results. You can feel better instantly. Like, it's not just all in your conscious mind, where when you're working in this space, you can't necessarily see it all the time, right? Like, sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm so healed. And then I'm like, I'm fucking not healed. Like, there's shit going on and I can't figure that out. But at least my physical body, if I take care of that, I'm like, okay, I got like an ab poking out, like my butt's looking a little nice here. So that's like a good entryway. I really think that if people are just wanting to at least start somewhere, start with the gym or taking care of your body.
Physiology needs.
Yeah. Going back to that full circle, guys.
Yeah. And everything in somatics and shamanic work is breath, sound, and movement. There is not a time in the gym that you're not doing an exercise, and this is coming from my 7-year background in health and fitness too, that you're not breathing, making sounds, or grunting, or like that exhilarating feeling when you finish a really heavy set, or moving your body.
Yeah.
Right. And you're literally reprogramming your body to respond to stress differently.
Yeah.
Stress and eustress. Right. There's like negative implications of stress, which is unresolved, unprocessed things, undigested experiences, which is what we see in a lot of like gut health disease and stuff like that. And then there's like eustress, which is like positive stress for the sake of growth. So there's an association thing there too.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, fitness, the fastest pathway.
Yeah.
Right. Most simple pathway, because it's something that we always have access to, and it's something that we associate to as a society. You know, what do? We go to the gym, we meet friends. Oh, boom, there's our social connection. We get all the endorphins. We get the healthy patterns that establish in our body.
Yeah.
Right. It's really hard not to be present in the gym.
Yeah. Very true.
When you got a shit ton of weight on your back.
Yeah.
Try thinking about your ex. Try thinking about that one time that your dad like slapped you with a belt. That weight's going to crash down so fast.
Yeah, well.
It's literally, it puts you in a position where you have to be present with yourself.
Yeah.
And you start to learn how to form this resiliency with discomfort. Where you're actually preparing your body to navigate life a lot more effectively.
Yeah. It's very true.
So easy. It's what I always go back to.
Yeah. Yeah. Whenever I'm feeling like my world is in chaos, the one place that I know I'm going to win at consistently is the gym. So I'll wake up and start winning because I'd go straight to the gym.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, my day's great now. I wanted to talk more about the trending things of health, and everyone's on this like healthy era trend. Right? Like everybody, which is great. I'm not knocking it. I'm so happy that everybody's wanting to reach healing and all of that. But so much people are just jumping on this trend of healing, and they're not actually going for the goal of true healing. They're doing it for, you know, to present themselves a certain way online or look a certain way or whatever. And then people end up following them because they think that, you know, they're an expert in that space or whatever it is. And then again, it goes back to the whole cycle of the broken or the blind leading the blind again. So about those trends, like, what are your thoughts on that with the trending healthy era?
Yeah. And I even just pulled my phone out because there's this quote by Owen Cook, he's a sales trainer, but he said something in this training my buddy sent me. And it said, when we see dark agendas that are gift wrapped in trendy causes, this is the seed of manipulation. Because we live in a trending society. We live in a social proof economy.
Yep.
And we live in a place where catharsis is being celebrated. Right? Like we see on Instagram, the screaming and the crying and the pillow smashing or pillow fucking or whatever people are doing. It's a real technique. It's a real technique, I promise.
Wait, people are posting about pillow fucking though? I don't think so.
No, that's just in my programs. But anyway. Subtle plug. Right. But really it's like the trending thing to do. Right. And it's the seed of, I want to be seen. I want to be heard. I want to be acknowledged, in which I might post this thing without maybe checking in with that first. Right. It's like, why am I posting this experience of mine? Do I see that it'll help someone or inspire someone or bring people closer to me? Absolutely. And what's on the other side of the intent, right? After that connection comes in, whether through it was like the observation of what some people would perceive to be vulnerable, right? Oh, that's so vulnerable. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Right? When like true vulnerability is like seeing someone in their shit.
Yeah.
Like puking in their fucking snot, bleeding mascara, right? That's vulnerability.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody writing about a time in their life, I personally don't consider that vulnerability. I consider that awareness
Or
and the ability to share and reflect, right?
Yeah.
You know, I think everybody has the capacity to do that. So when we see things online where people are just pouring out themselves and everything else, you know, my question is, why are you doing it? You know, why are you sharing this? You know, again, if it's meant to connect, to inspire, to educate, to inform, and it has a positive intent, great. You know, and there are always questions, right? And we live in a social proof economy. We live in a place where, you know, whatever looks good on the gram, you know, is it gram worthy? Like, fuck that. Like, we're moving into a system of values that your integrity and the quality of your character is going to outmeasure anything you put on your Instagram. Right?
Yeah.
And that's up to each person's own level of discernment. You know, that's an independent responsibility.
Yeah.
That's an individual responsibility, which everybody defines differently. So it's actually pretty challenging for me to even answer in a singular way. Right? This is how I would weed through it. Right? Because personally, I think there's nothing wrong with healing trending, right? I'd rather healing be trending than like other things.
Some random pop culture.
Yeah, like
drama.
pop culture, like Machine Gun Kelly, Megan Fox bullshit. Like, nobody cares.
Yeah, like why are you guys wasting your time with that shit?
I'm not putting my energy in that. Like, I hold the belief that nobody cares because I therefore don't care.
Yeah.
Like, see what I do to myself every day? It's like I'm projecting this and I'm fully owning it. I understand this. Got it. And right, it comes down to integrity. You know what I'm saying? And this is just going to be like a record on repeat here, you know, because I think as long as people are interested, that's great. There is always, just from like my personal standpoint, a level of concern. You know, are people fully aware of what they're getting themselves into?
Yeah.
You know, like we even, you know, we were talking earlier too, and it's like, you know, before you go to a breathwork session that's going to have 50 to 80 to 100 to 150 people, have you ever been in an environment like that where people are screaming and crying and yelling and all the things, and you're laying on the ground and you have nowhere to go? Right? How do you respond to that? Because we as a society are not conditioned, nor are we afforded many opportunities where we're able to experience that. And that's why sometimes when people go in with this expectation of being healed, it actually has the counter opposite reaction. Right?
It'll
because
like
they might not
go.
have been fully prepared for that. And what happens is they shut down, and everything that they wanted to get out gets pushed deeper down. So the question is, do you feel properly resourced? Do you have a relative level of safety established? Do you have somewhere on your body you feel safe? Do you have something in your life that you can attach yourself to for a moment in case things get out of hand? Because again, my dad, you know, I always joke about it. He always told me, hope for the best, plan for the worst. And I was like, damn, that motherfucker's wise. Like, because now I use it so much, almost to a fault. Yeah. Right? And it's like, I hope that healing lives on the other side of this, and I'm also planning on it not happening at the same time. Right?
Do you feel like that mindset can manifest some negative things because of planning for the worst? I get confused with that, you know, because I get it. It's basically a detachment to the outcome, but prepared to handle it in whichever way it goes at the same time. But I know people who are just like, it's got to be positive thoughts, think positive all the time. I'm like, but how do you do that if a negative outcome happens? And like, isn't it smarter to actually plan for a negative outcome as well?
Right.
I don't know. Like, where's the balance in that?
I mean, now we're having a conversation about non-duality.
Yeah.
Because it's like, even in the whole positive negative thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I saw a meme, and it's like, you have an experience and it was positive. You have another experience and it was negative. Your choice. Like, everything always has this fluctuation of positive and negative around it. Right? So it's like the hope for the best, plan for the worst, like I said, to a fault. Like it's to a fault because it's so much easier for us to be pessimistic than optimistic. And there's even a lot of studies on this too, right? Toxic positivity, right? Love and light, love and light, love and light. Like think positive, think positive, think positive. And that's repressing every other negatively charged experience away.
So
Again,
true.
further into the shadow, deeper into the experience, which means when that shit comes up and there's nowhere to run and you're in a dark room or a dark cave with nowhere to run and you're really truly with yourself and you've been pushing it away for that long, that is painful. I've been there so many fucking times. I still get to that point. I'm like, oh damn, I thought I was doing so good. I put in so much work. I know so many things. Fuck. That's the downfall. Oh, I'm creating everything by myself. Oh my God, I'm the cause of everything. I'm the least common denominator.
And then the spiral happens.
Right.
Right. That's so true because there's been plenty of times where, and I'll say this lovingly, of course, with our group of friends. Like our group of friends, everybody's an entrepreneur, everybody's so positive, yada, yada. But when I'm going through it and everybody's so fucking positive, sometimes I'm like, shut the fuck. So instead of like listening to it, you know what I mean? I'm just being really honest. I love all of you. If any of our friend group watches this, it's not against you. I'm just, sometimes I don't want to hear your bullshit. But anyways, but yeah, sometimes instead of, you know, surrounding myself with community and people and all of that, because everybody's so fucking annoyingly positive sometimes, I'm like, I'm just going to isolate myself. And then that's where the danger comes in because now I'm left alone with my thoughts. Now I'm dealing with all this shit by myself. And the only wall I'm bouncing it off of is my own fucking self, which is still a negative wall. Like, so that's, I can totally see how that would be a problem.
Yeah. Authenticity is the best policy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's why people, we've been in the same rooms, the same people, and like, you know, I'm the same way. You know, and when people ask me how you are, I'm like, honestly, I'm not very good right now. And they're like, what? Like nobody's ever responded to them in that way before. And I'm like, I'm just being fucking real, dude. Like I thought about punching somebody in the face before I walked in here. And you just, you know, I'm not going to hit you. But I just want to let you know, like, I have this thing that when I stand in lines, you know, I still have these thoughts of like wanting to choke somebody out because I'm like, it sounds fun. Like I'm a martial artist. What do you expect?
That looks like a chokeable neck. That sounds
exactly. It's exactly. You know, so I get it, right? And that's where it is. I would rather be just completely honest up front and like, yo, I'm not in a pretty good place right now, so I might not stay around here very long. You know, and
that's something I'm learning to adopt. It's just being fucking honest. I mean, even with your breathwork on Sunday, when I messaged you, I'm like, honestly, I'm fucking over trying to pretend like everything's great. I'm like, I'm too broke to afford your breathwork class. Like, let's just be honest here. But it's like a hesitation to share how, like, what's actually going on in your life. But when you do share it, it's also like a breath of fresh air. Because you're like, what the fuck are you going to do? Are you going to make fun of me? Great, because I've already came up with all of the funny jokes about how my life is right now. So what else, you know?
Right.
But it's relieving after.
Yeah, especially when you're presented with like a gift. And it's like, wow, thank you so fucking much for being real. Let me reward realness.
Yeah.
Like I'm all about it.
Yeah.
You know, when somebody gives me some fucking story about they have to like take their dog to the vet and shit like that, it's like, all right, well, cool.
Yeah, sorry.
You know, with this, it's like, wow, I actually feel so much closer to you.
Yeah.
And like, I'm so glad that you like trust me to that degree to share that with me. And this is the exact type of experience that I want people inside it for, because you're going to get the most benefit.
Yeah.
Here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a spiritual capitalist as much as people might think. You know? It's like spiritual capitalism, that's a thing, right? Profiting off of manifestation rituals and vision boards and all the things. And, you know, sometimes it's just like, hey, how about you just like take this and then like tell a few friends and like, cool. Like I believe in dharmic retribution. Yeah. You know, not karmic retribution, dharmic retribution, right? Darkness is your dharma. We'll talk about that later, but.
Yeah. 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 I said spiritual capitalism.
Yeah, spiritual capitalism.
I like that term. Yeah, so I wanted to get more into like just labeling of different, I guess, species of people. I don't know if that's the right term.
Species.
Different people who are just kind of popping up all over the world. Spiritual narcissist is one of the when I sent you a DM, I'm like, what are things that you're interested in talking about? You said spiritual narcissism. Can you explain that to me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've kind of touched on it a little bit here.
Yeah.
In like full transparency, like when we look at narcissism, right, in itself, it's important to recognize that it's a defense mechanism. It's a coping mechanism.
So it's not just a personality trait.
That's the misconception. Right?
Okay.
It wasn't until Western medicine came along and said it's a disorder of someone's personality, which actually became the primary vehicle of avoidance, in which now we're labeling, judging, and mistreating people who are narcissistic, when in reality, calling something narcissistic is narcissistic turned on itself, right? It's actually considered pathological narcissism. When you're labeling something as narcissistic, that's narcissistic in motion, in action.
Interesting.
Right? Because narcissism is a defense
done
mechanism.
Some narcissism shit then.
I mean, we all are to some degree.
On some degree, yeah.
We all are, right? Just like we're all codependent on some degree, because narcissism and codependency run hand in hand. There's a whole study and science on family systems where there's a narcissist and then there's someone who's codependent, someone who enables it, right? And there's a saying that the first one to become aware becomes the one responsible, in which normally that dynamic is interchanged, where the codependent then becomes the narcissist and the narcissist becomes the codependent, and they're codependent on the enabling and X, Y, and Z. And then the children become the byproducts of that, and they form their own personality traits pulling from both parent systems, right? So when we look at narcissism, it's important to know that it's a coping mechanism. It is a byproduct of trauma. And what I would say a narcissist is essentially a child who had to become the hero of their own story, because who they once thought was a hero didn't show up for them in that way. Their hero became the villain, in which now everybody else becomes the villain as well.
Oh my God, that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
I'm a narcissist. Just kidding.
And cut.
And that's the end of this.
No. But now, right, and we were just talking about how everything is inherently spiritual, right? So when we put the terms together, right, a spiritual narcissist, it's mostly catering, and then we talked about meeting people where they're at, because for some reason we live in a society where, oh, you do the spiritual stuff, right? Or you're the spiritual entrepreneur, or you're the spiritual business coach, or you're the spiritual this, spiritual this, spiritual this. We're all motherfucking spiritual.
Yeah.
We're all spiritual beings living a physical experience.
Yep.
Right? There's a soul inside of each and every one of us, unless you're atheist and you have your own beliefs. Then, right?
Yeah.
No judgment.
Yeah.
Just how it is.
Yeah.
We can then recognize that everything is inherently spiritual. But when we go into spiritual spaces, I'm going to do this, and spiritual communities, right? The narcissistic ones are the ones who are trying to, one, bypass their work, and to judge everyone unconsciously, unknowingly, right? Because narcissism is normally an unconscious trait. We don't recognize that we're actually doing it, which is why they say in the clinical diagnosis of narcissisms is that they're unable to recognize that they're a narcissist because it's unconscious, right? So this unconscious act of wanting everybody to subscribe to the same belief or subscribe to the same value system or subscribe to the one modality or to the one thing. This is what's going to heal you. This is what's going to heal you. This is what's going to heal you. This worked for me, so it has to work for you. And if you're not in alignment or if you're not on board with it, then fuck you, you can leave. Right? So they use all the language. They use all the terminologies. They know the modalities. And yet, when they're leading spaces or when they're facilitating or anything else, they have a selfish intent that is not being acknowledged. right?
What do you think those selfish intents would be?
Validation, profit, acceptance, deception, manipulation. We see it a lot in healing spaces, right? Why there has been a lot of women who have been victimized through plant medicine experiences and psychedelic therapies. Because what happens is that this person who's maybe facilitating or leading a ceremony or taking someone through a therapy session has this thing that lives inside of them that really wants to take advantage of this situation. And they see an opportunity in which now they become prey.
Wow.
And they're predators in disguise.
Has there been a lot of instances like that?
More than I'd like to admit.
Really?
Yeah, more than like to admit.
Wow.
There have been a lot of claims and a lot of things that have come out, you know, in which now there's a severe distrust, right? And this is the same distrust we talked about in the coaching industry or therapy industry. And because it's happening where it is, and most people don't even think about it, right?
I mean, I didn't.
Because, right, you know, even in those instances, you know, it can't happen. So they have their own selfish intent placed before the needs of the others, right? This is the do as I say, not as I do mentality.
Yeah.
And this is the, right, person who might feel as though they're fully embodied, when in reality, the first opportunity that shows up where they're confronted about their wrongdoings, they're immediately one to blame or place the shame on someone else. And this is where the gaslighting starts to come up, and they start distorting and twisting their reality, and they start using different words to bypass the actual thing that is the cause of someone's pain.
Wow.
Right? So that all wrapped up in a tiny little bow, it can get really sketchy, and it's very like cloudy, knowing that like in these quote unquote spiritual spaces or quote unquote spiritual experiences, that it's something to be aware of. That's why the felt sense is so important, right? Listen to your gut, right? Before you like eat that mushroom cap, or before you drink that cup of ayahuasca, or before you take this like random drink from a stranger.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that can be a spiritual experience, you know? It's like check in with that and ask like, what is this person's intent? And even being very direct.
Like,
you know?
asking them.
Very direct.
Yeah.
Right? Because again, we're communicating on a subtle level always. Right? It's like when you walk into a room, a lion doesn't need to roar in order for people to know it's in the room.
I
You know what I'm
love
saying?
that. Yeah.
Right? You know it's a fucking lion. Look at that fool. You know? And you know what a cobra is.
Yeah.
You don't need it to sting you before you know it's deadly.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like bringing it back to the animal kingdom.
Yeah.
And we have that part of us that lives inside of us. We have it in our mammalian center of our mind. This is where our feelings live, right? So those gut feelings are directly related to our animal instincts that we all have, because we're all humans, we're all mammals.
Yep.
So the more we tune into that frequency and the more we're able to pick it up on other people, the heightened our bullshit detector becomes, right? We have a built-in bullshit barometer.
Yep.
And it's called your instincts.
Yep.
Right? It's called your body, right? Because we have this like intelligent system that's communicating always, whether it's consciously and or unconsciously. And we're feeling through every single experience in the world. And the more we become tuned into that, like that's where we become unfuckwithable.
That's why people feel, well, certain people feel super protected. Like, I didn't before, because I never used to listen to my intuition. I like would write it off completely all the time. But now, every time I do tune into my intuition, it's fucking spot on. And I've never been wrong yet since I've awakened in that area. I'm not going to say I'm completely awakened, but because there's always work to be done. But, you know, it's crazy the gut feelings that you can have about people and it be spot on.
I'm super curious, like, what was that moment for you where you've like finally started listening to like that gut feeling or that intuition that kind of allowed you to like step into that?
I don't know if it was a huge single definitive moment. I think it was over time. Well, one, I got really tired of being in a weird brain fog. I was living life like very just coasting and not actually being present, not aware. I felt like, you know how when people feel like they go to work, they drive and they don't even remember the drive going to work. Like that brain fog existed on my everyday life. And so it wasn't until I started eating healthier and taking care of the basic human needs of my body and everything again that I felt like, okay, now I'm more in tune with, just thinking about my thoughts, which is like the beginning of it all. And it wasn't until, honestly, probably even just starting to date Dylan, like actually listening to my intuition, because I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on my podcast, but there's been a few times that I've caught Dylan in he doesn't want to call it a lie, a non-communicated, something it was not communicated.
A non-communicated agreement.
Yeah. Where where I had like this gut feeling that there was something not being communicated, and each time that I feel that, always spot on. And it has caused a little bit of arguments or fights, I'll say, but it's not been wrong. So it's just more so, I think, those tiny moments when I actually tuned in and I listened to it and took action to listen to it. And I think over time of seeing that it's actually telling me the truth. I think like it just over time building the confidence that, oh, my intuition told me this and I was right. Boom. Okay. That's one thing of confidence. Then I found another thing. I'm like, oh, my intuition's telling me this. Okay. I'm pretty right. And now I just more so trust myself to be able to recognize when something doesn't feel good or right. But also, I don't know. It's hard though, because there's so many times where I'm just like, I'm more not nervous. I don't even know what the word is. I'm just very hyper analytical of a lot of things. And sometimes that gets confusing with the intuition because I'm like over analyzing everything. I don't know if this is what my mom taught me, but just being paranoid. Like, I mean, even to the point, and we were talking about this earlier, I went through his Instagram I don't even know why. I checked it on your profile again, and all of his pictures are gone. And so I was like, I had the moment, I'm like, oh my God, I just gave my address to this fucking fake coach. So even then I'm like over here grabbing my gun and I'm like, I'm just ready. If this fool shows up, I have a gun. And I'm like, that's my paranoia side. But I'm like, is that my gut feeling told me, obviously it's you. But then my paranoia kicked in. So it's like, it's hard. It's hard to know 100% of the time when to trust your gut.
That's it. That's totally it. And we were talking before, and I was like, I went to psychic school. And no shit though. Yeah. And the first lesson they taught us, they're like, doubt is always going to be the first thing that stands in the way of you and your intuition. Like when you get a hit, like some people call it a download, right? It's a thought. Let's get that clear. I have a thought that came in by no coincidence, and it told me to do this. Cool. Follow it. Yeah. Right? But it's like, are you sure? Like that conversation I get in my mind sometimes, that hyper analytical, and I'm like, wait, that cannot be it, bro. Yeah. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah. It's like I got like 7 people in my mind and like having this like dispute over like the evolutionary theory of mankind. And I'm just like, is this really, could it be that simple? Yeah. Right? It's like that doubt. It's like the one thing that cuts it away. Right? And I'm like, oh, God damn it. Like time and time again.
Yeah, same. We all have our doubts like all the time. Excuse me. Yeah, I can't believe we're already at the hour of this. I feel like I didn't even ask. Whoa. Yeah, hold on. Let me go through some of these. It's been great conversation though, so honestly, I'm not bothered if we don't get to some of these questions, but there are a few that I did want to talk about, and this might be just more kind of rapid fire, but one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, do you believe that one can truly experience unconditional love, or is it just a concept?
That's a really interesting one. I've been actually playing with this one in my mind, so I'm going to do my best to put these thoughts together in a way that makes a certain amount of sense. So love, right, is simply just connection. Right. I think there's so much emphasis placed on love. Like, what is love? What does love feel like? And why not just have love be the existence of everything that is? right? We're so focused on the isness of what love is or what love is not versus the allness of it, right? Which is the entirety and everything that was created and cultivated on this earth and throughout the ethers and universe or multiverse or whatever you believe in is made up of that same substance, right? I truly do believe that with unconditional love, everything exists, everything is created, right? That's our creative energy circulating always. And that's how we take our creative thoughts and inspirations and put them into material form, like the podcast, for instance, right? This was done with love, right? Love isn't conditional and or unconditional. It's all of it. It's not the isness, it's the allness. And if we're able to like see love through the lens of allness, then we don't need to worry about what it is, what it's not, whether it's conditional or unconditional. It just is everything that is of the existence in which we are a part of everything happening at once, in which everything is love. It's only when it becomes distorted that it turns to hate. And it's only when it becomes distorted or questioned that it becomes something that it's not.
God, that's like really deep. I feel like I'm going to have to rewatch or re-listen to just that portion a few times to fully grasp the concept.
Exactly.
But I guess that's exactly what you were trying to say.
Right.
It's
all simple.
Yeah.
It's simple as much as it is complex.
Yeah.
Right? It's sometimes so simple that we think we have to wrap our minds around it.
Yeah.
When in reality, we were created from love. Whether you believe in a creator or higher power, God, universe, or spirit, name of the many names, it's right, the relativity of it and also the objectivity of it. Right? We're quick to objectify what love is and what love is not. Because what did we grow up looking at?
All those rom-com movies.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Hallmark,
programming.
thanks. Yeah.
Disney.
Programming.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, you fucked us.
That's a way deeper conversation that I have to go about Disney, but
there's some darkness in Disney. That's a whole
I
different,
know.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. But really, it's like, look at all the programming that led up to this conversation, right? What we observed in our parents as love, right? What we attract in like unhealthy partnerships as love. And then what we recognize through a healthy partnership and what love is the continuous commitment to connect. It's a continuous commitment to connect.
Yeah.
Every breath, every step, right? Every kiss, all the other things that follow that.
Sexy time.
Yeah, sexy time. Hanky-panky time. Hanky-panky, right?
Hanky-panky.
Right? And also, right, it's recognizing that too.
Yeah.
You know, like we sometimes put so much pressure on like, what is unconditional love?
Yeah.
Right? But everything we experience has a condition attached to it.
Yes.
Conditioning is a fucking choice. Whether we want to believe it or not.
Yep.
When we say that we've been conditioned by society or conditioned by our parents or conditioned by the systems, we chose to interact with that system. We chose to incarnate in this body to live this life, to then have the choice to believe it or not to believe it. And we made that choice. And we can no longer victimize our experience and say that we did not.
Because we did.
Exactly.
That's so good. That's so true. Oh, wow. Speaking of, the higher power and, I guess kind of surrendering to a higher power or accepting life as it is. I feel like I personally have been in a space of learning how to surrender, like learning how to not really control or try to control the illusion of control everything. For someone like me, where less and less control has been available in my life, what advice can you give to someone about surrendering to a higher power? Like, is there some easier way to learn how to surrender?
Wow. You just want me to spill all the things today.
Yeah.
I'm wrapping my head around that question right now because it's interesting, right? To surrender, right, is to inherently say, in order for me to adopt something or take on something, that requires a lot. It requires me to let go of who I am, what I believe to be true or untrue, how I operate in the world and everything that is attached to myself being two separate words, which is the identity and everything else that I've associated to that identity for the duration of my lifetime up to this moment. And that's a lot to ask from someone.
That is, yeah.
So what I would say is it's a continuous devotion. It's not so much saying, oh, I have to surrender now, right? It's not like you just took a hit of 5-MeO Bufo and you better surrender or else you're fucked.
Yeah.
Personal experience, guys. Right?
I've not tried that, but
5-MeO Bufo, be cautious, hold it with reverence, and seek professional guidance. That's what I will say. That is a social responsibility. Oh God, I just felt it
did
a
you
little
just
bit.
bring up a bunch of
I just felt it again. It's great, thank you. And it's a lot to ask of someone to do in a moment's notice, right? Because we can cognitively say that we're surrendering, right? But our body chemically responds to that.
Yep.
Whether it's true or untrue. So like if that surrender exists and it feels fully ready and available, have at it, right? But if there's this recognition that something feels off and I'm not ready to surrender yet, then take the pressure off. You know, like
don't force yourself into surrendering.
Right? It's like you meet somebody on the first date and you're going to get married.
Oh,
that's an act of surrender.
Yeah. Yeah.
Truly, right? But we don't do that, right? So what do? We date, right? Continuously date your devotion. Continuously date that relationship with a higher power, because it is a relationship. It's just different than this physical one that we're experiencing here.
Yeah.
Right? So what does that look like for you? Does that look like prayer? Does it look like devotion? Does it look like exploration? Right? Curiosity.
Yeah.
Asking questions, right? That's a devotion, right? To continuously commit to date the thing that you want to understand deeper until you get to a point where you can fully surrender to that relationship and experience all the pleasure that can happen within inside of it. Just like an intimate relationship.
Yeah.
Right? You date and date and date and date and date, and it's like, oh, I trust, right? Especially women, right? Let's say you're meeting a guy, right? One night stands. Most women don't get off. I'm just going to say it straight up.
Very true.
Why? Because there's a lack of trust. There's a lack of depth. There's a lack of intimacy. There's a lack of knowing and understanding someone, so that way the nervous system can fully surrender. Yet when you've been dating somebody over a period of time and there's this connection that's established, that's been held as sacred or such as sacred, then the experience itself, it's like
so
explosive.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Same thing.
Yep.
Just through a quote unquote spiritual lens.
Very true.
You know? It's just another branch of relationship.
It really is. Yeah. That's great advice. And I think that's, unfortunately, a good spot to end it on.
Just orgasms with God?
Yeah. Just have orgasms with God.
Amazing.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Well, we are here at the end of our hour, unfortunately. But fortunately, I guess, for our listeners, because I'm sure they'll want to come back for more for the altered state version. Is there any final parting words that you want to say to our listeners, viewers, that can kind of help them in their journey?
Be open to the truth. We are in a time where a lot of the deceptions and distortions are very loud in our face. We as a society, as a collective, have been duped and lied to and encouraged to believe in false gods with lowercase g. And just to remain open, because there's a lot of pain and sensitivity right now in the world.
Yeah.
From government, institutions, systems, right? Privilege, oppression, all the things. So it's just to remain open to the truth. Capital T, not lower T. Right? Capital T truth.
I love that. Thank you for being on my show for this episode. We're going to jump straight into the altered state. I'm not going to lie. I'm not really feeling the chocolate right now.
Might need to eat another one.
Yeah. How many chocolates can I have? Well, thank you for listening to another episode of the Danna-Gift Show, and I will see you guys next Wednesday.
Bye.